Reform is obliterating the Tories. It's too late to avoid electoral catastrophe. And why would you think I would want to avoid that, you silly mare? What have I been telling everyone? For years. Since about 12 months after Boris Johnson waltzed into 10 Downing Street and promptly began behaving like a limp-wristed, sparrow-boned, soy boy, albino jellyfish. I mean, really, see-through, spineless, maritime, free floaters do have more of a spinal column than that fella. So I voted for him, and then 12 months later vowed that I would constantly harp on about it so everybody knew it would be better to see the full-blown commies in Downing Street and at least rip the plaster off quick and carry on voting for Blue Labour, which is what the modern, wet, woke Tories are. So let's read this story and I'll tell you why you shouldn't give a monkey's fart about the impending collapse of the Conservative Party. Oh yes, and also why everybody with a hole in their arse saw this coming 20 miles away. Big tax cuts might have prevented these by-election disasters, but Mr. Sunak chose otherwise. Camilla Tominay. Yeah, Camilla's obviously got the IQ of a pork pie. I've pointed this out before. I've also, The Telegraph's the only media that I pay for because I think you should try and support at least something that's supposed to be nominally conservative. But I have unsubscribed to them many times in the past. I'm like a battered wife. It's a strange relationship I've got with The Telegraph because essentially 60% of them are totally clueless. They're just better than everybody else in the printed media in the UK. And she's a classic example. These wet, woke, modern Tories that honestly think coin is the only thing that matters. Like the worst type of political animal. They think of war and death and chaos. They don't think of crippled soldiers having done the duty and coming home and expecting them to be cared for out of moral duty. All they see is coin. They think of conflict and they think, can I make some money? And they think of injured veterans and they think, ooh, these disabled veterans are going to cost, they'll settle on the public purse. They think all you care about, dear listeners, is money. They think you are as bereft and morally bankrupt as they are. They don't believe people like me who fought for hearth and home and community and camaraderie and friendship. There's more to life than money. These people, these rats that have run the UK for the last 12 years, don't believe it. They do not believe there's anything more important in life than money. And that's why they haven't got a moral fibre amongst them. They don't think any further than gold, like Scrooge McDuck when he's swimming in his vault. Let's read this drivel, shall we, and see what nonsense she's got to say, other than the obvious that no, tax cuts wouldn't have stopped this electoral collapse. Obviously. Yes, Labour won the battle of the by-elections, but it is the war between the second and third place parties that is going to define the future of British politics. In years gone by, there would have been no need for Reform UK. Richard Tice's party preaches the kind of conservatism that was mainstream under Margaret Thatcher, small statism, with low taxes and effective border control. At least she mentioned the border, yeah, something that does matter to normal people who are watching their communities sink. Faster than Diane Abbott if she fell in the pond holding 13 bags of donuts that morning's breakfast. But all that changed when the Conservatives started co-opting increasing numbers of social democrats into its ranks in a bid to combat New Labour. Both Cameron and Osborne both seem to regard people with right-wing views as fruitcakes and loons and closet racists. Yeah, imagine that, people with right-wing views wanting to vote Conservative. I mean, the clue's in the title. It's why I've always said we'd be well within our rights to deport all of the illegal immigrants straight to Scotland and Wales because they voted for out-Marxists for a decade. At least England wasn't that daft. I mean, I've got some level of scorn for the English, but at least they nominally voted for a party that was called Conservative. The Scots, God love them, they wouldn't have a leg to stand on if we sent every single economic migrant north of the border, because they've been voting for a party that openly advocates it for over a decade. They appear to believe that the Conservatives could only win power as a one-nation party of Remainers. Conservatives have always boasted a broad church of views, but Rishi Sunak is now languishing in the polls because his MPs no longer seem to belong to the same congregation. Yeah, they belong to the congregation that says 20,000 Somalians with machetes, move them in next door to the school. That's a good idea. What's interesting about the election in Kingswood is that if combined, the Conservatives and Reform produced a higher vote than Labour. That's not interesting. How long have I been saying it? 3 years? I told you this. When we decided that we'd rather see Labour win than continue voting for the least worst option when they're just as wet and woke, I said years ago that maybe 15-20% of the Conservative voters would finally grasp the nettle and say, I'm done. I'm not voting Conservative anymore. And because every single seat in the UK usually goes down to a couple of thousand votes, the Tories are doomed. They are done. I've been saying that for years. This isn't clever or nuanced or intellectual. It's been obvious for about 2 years. Everybody saw it coming. The wet woke Tories will not get the vote of Conservative people that have been paying attention. Yes, they can rely on the sort of not plugged into YouTube, get all the views from the BBC Conservatives, but 20% of the party voters will not put a tick in the box for those wet, limp-wristed Tories ever again. Party needs to die, and we are willing to suffer through a Labour government to achieve that aim. So this isn't clever, and there's more to life than money. But let me know what you think. If you're one of the remaining Conservative voters, I really would like to know what your thought process is. I don't see how the Conservatives can be any worse than Labour. Labour will be openly left. Conservatives are closetly left. What's the difference? Labour are almost a little bit more honest. Immigration under the Conservatives has got to its highest point ever. Higher than even under Blair. What did we get, 600,000 last year? It's lunacy. So I'm not voting for them. I am a Conservative and I stupidly voted for them in the last 3 general elections. And I've been saying this for years. I'm done and I suggest you should be too. It's time to buckle up and batten down the hatches because Labour are going to win and I don't care if they do. But that's just what I think. If you're going to hold your nose and keep on with the Tories, I'd love to know your reasoning because I do not see the logic behind it. Let's pull the bandage off quick. Let's completely decimate the nation and hopefully rise from the ashes like a phoenix at the end of it. Because all we've got a choice between now is managed decline and mass immigration or total collapse and mass immigration. Pick one. I know what I prefer. But what say you? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. I've got to skip tomorrow's live stream because I'm going to see my mother-in-law this weekend. Winner. But yeah, I'll be back Monday. All right? Everyone have a marvellous weekend. Keep your chins up. It's funny, if nothing else. And I'll see you very soon. Toodle pip. Cheers.